Hi everyone, and welcome to There's No Such Thing as Normal, a podcast about neurodiversity, disability and mental health. I'm Lou, your host, and I'm neurodivergent myself, and I'm also completely blind. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking about weighted blankets and then go on a bit to talk about weighted lap pads and compression sheets. So I'll cover how they help and how they work, and also the things that you should consider if you're thinking about getting one for yourself or for somebody else. So yeah, I absolutely love weighted blankets and lap pads and all of that stuff, and I've used them for years and they really help me. So I thought it'd be useful to share a bit about them with you. So what is a weighted blanket? Well, funnily enough, it's kind of in the name. It's one big heavy blanket. But yeah, it's a blanket with generally like glass beads or other forms of, can be anything. I mean, a friend made me a lap pad filled with kidney beans. So it can literally be anything. It doesn't matter as long as it's something heavy. If you can even make them yourself, but that's a whole other thing. Doesn't matter. They're filled with weight and they're distributed evenly into pockets so that you don't just pull up the blanket and then all the weight just go flump to the bottom. That would be pointless, wouldn't it? So yeah, blanket that's heavy or a lap pad that's heavy. Compression sheets are something different. I'll get onto those later. So yeah, they kind of started a while back in like the 1950 on and onwards. I think the first one might have been in 1990. I don't know. Basically, a while back. They've been around a while for sensory processing challenges associated with neurodivergent conditions like autism and ADHD. But they have become much more sort of mainstreamed and popular, probably because of the fact that they are amazing and people love them. And then word gets out on social media, and I think with the rise of mental health awareness and people talking about these things a lot more, people finding solutions to help themselves, that's kind of just how it's come about, really. So whereas they used to be only in like special sensory shops, now I've even seen them in Lidl's and supermarkets and things like that. So they're very much easily accessible, and they're definitely cheaper than they used to be too. When they were, marketed more as sensory things, they were really expensive, but they're a lot cheaper. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent again. Let's stick to it. So, yeah, they provide. So how do they work? They provide what's called deep pressure stimulation or deep touch stimulation, whatever you want to call it, which sounds a bit fancy, but it's not really. It's kind of just the way that the blanket's heavy and it presses down on the body and it stimulates the sort of deep pressure receptors in the skin, which basically provides comfort and soothes the body. It's kind of like a hug. So having a weighted blanket on you and wrapping yourself up simulates the feeling of being hugged. So it's just soothing, and it's great. I mean, yeah, who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want a hug whenever you want one? Although, a weighted blanket's never exactly going to replace a hug, but it does feel quite like that. So who can benefit? Well, lots and lots of people, but their main uses are for those with anxiety. As mentioned above, they are very calming and they provide that soothing input, so they're great for calming you down, helping you to feel more grounded and settled. They can also be great for sleep, especially if, anxiety is something that can, keep you awake. And I think some studies have shown it can help you to fall asleep a bit faster, maybe stay asleep more and not wake up as much. And then they're also great for, as I said earlier, they started out a lot for people with sensory processing challenges associated with autism and ADHD and things like that. And again, us neurodivergent people are often highly anxious and often struggle to sleep, so they all kind of just link in. So yeah, for autism, they are useful because they kind of just give a really lovely sensory input. I mean, I've kind of mentioned that, but for us autistic people, it is particularly calming to have a weighted blanket because it does give that really soothing input, and also it can help with things like sensory overload or general sort of overwhelm and anxiety, because they're calming. And I don't know about you lot, but I'm always looking for things that might help me be more calm. So if you are someone that's quite anxious, then yeah, could maybe help. They can also help with focus in ADHD, because they make you feel more grounded, and if you feel more grounded, you're going to be more focused, which makes total sense. They can help if your mind's sort of, quite scatty or all over the place and things like that, because they make you feel calmer. It all comes down to helping you feel more calm, basically. So here's some tips for choosing the perfect weighted blanket. So the first, and I'd say number one most important thing if you're going to get a weighted blanket, is that it must be around 10% of your body weight. So for example, if you're 70 kilograms, then a 7-kilogram blanket would be perfect. It's really, really important, because if the blanket's too light, it's not really going to do anything. If the blanket's too heavy, that can be bad news, because it can put extra stress on the body, and it's just not great to have a really heavy blanket on you. If it's too heavy, it's just bad news, basically. So especially for children, but children need to be supervised when using them anyway, really. So 70%, goodness no, I'm getting confused with the 70 kilograms example and the 10%. My brain's just going mad. But yeah, 10% of your body weight. And then if you're like me and you genuinely can't be doing with the maths, then there's always a calculator, because you don't want to get it wrong. Trust me, it's sort of thing I'd think, oh yeah, I need this weight blanket, and then turn up and be like, what on earth has just turned up? It's either too heavy or too light. Yeah, probably use a calculator. It's safest option. Thinking about the material, they're generally either sort of cotton, which is going to be cooler and more breathable, or if you just want to be super duper cozy, you could have a fleece one. Now my blanket is a fleecy one, but annoyingly the cover doesn't come off. So in the summer, it gets hot. In an ideal world, it's probably nice to have a blanket perhaps that has a nice, removable fleecy cover. Then you can just take it off and have it as just a cotton blanket when it's hot, and then when it's winter and you want to get all snuggly and watch telly and be all cozy, then you can put the fluffy fleecy cover on. But again, it's completely what works for you and what works for your sensory needs. So thinking about the material is always a good idea. Also the size, oh my goodness, it gets so confusing, because I know a single bed is like, 130 by 180 centimetres or something. But a lot of blankets then come either slightly smaller or slightly bigger, and oh god, it gets a bit complicated. So you need to think about what you want it for. Do you want it to be the whole size of your bed, or do you want it to be a bit smaller? Definitely check the size, otherwise again, it might turn up and you get a nasty surprise. You might be expecting a small blanket for a single bed, and then you might end up with a king-size blanket that could cover your bed 3 times over. Again, probably the sort of thing I'd end up doing. Just check the size. It could end up a bit complicated. Then you have to go through the hassle of sending it back, and sending things back is generally a pain, but sending a 8-kilogram blanket back, a lot of effort, and I'd rather not. So heed my warning and check the size. What else do you need to think about? Oh yeah, the cost. The cost ranges massively. And just because a blanket costs £150 doesn't necessarily mean it's better than one that costs £50. It doesn't really, as with anything in the world, cost doesn't always necessarily mean it's going to be better. If you're new to weighted blankets, probably safer to just start with a cheaper one. But again, it's probably just going to be great. I think my weighted blanket cost was it £40 or something? £50? I got mine a few years ago now. Mine's been going ages. Also, it might be good, although I did just say it'd be an absolute nightmare to return a massive heavy blanket, it could be that certain places do offer a sort of trial period. I don't know. I know it's possible to do it with things like mattresses and stuff. I don't see why not with blankets too. Who knows? But good to see if you can return it if you want to go through all that effort. But something to think about anyway. Read reviews. Yeah, I mean, that's just same with anything really. Reviews are useful. You know, if a blanket says, well, I had it 2 days and then it ripped and there was beads everywhere and my bed was full of beads. Yeah, you don't want that one. Although I've never actually heard of that happening. That's just me being silly as usual. But yeah, I'd say check the reviews. I mean, you can't go too wrong with a weighted blanket. I mean, you'd think, stitch it up nice and tight and it won't fall apart. But yeah, some are going to be better quality. I'm on my second blanket now. My first one did actually go weird. The little pockets inside, sort of, I think the stitching did actually come apart slightly inside, which meant it didn't make a mess, but it did mean that there was, bits of the blanket that were really full of beads and then other bits that weren't. And yeah, but the one I've got now has been a lot better. So yeah, quality varies. I found that out. So yeah, just a few sort of cautions. They're not suitable for babies or young children, because obviously babies and young children wouldn't be able to lift it off themselves. It's really important that whoever's using it can lift it off themselves, because you've got to get out of it, basically. If you've got a heavy blanket and you want to get up, say you need the toilet or something in the night, you've got to be able to easily lift it off and basically, be able to, manipulate it yourself. So yeah, they can be used by children, but again, it's just a case of having more supervision. And I think they say for children that they shouldn't be necessarily sleeping all night with them on. I mean, that's kind of just a safety thing, and they do say that they can be used like to get to sleep, and then parents should take them off afterwards. But I mean, it depends on the age of the child and the ability, but it's kind of just common sense, really. It depends on the person. Yeah, I mean, some people can find that they're too hot or heavy. I mean, yeah, if you're new to weighted blankets, maybe go for slightly lighter. But again, that there's always a risk. You don't really want to go too light because it's not going to work. You don't want it too heavy. But again, I think, to be honest, I think the material, if you are someone that does get quite hot at night, if you're going to use them at night, then I would say, going for a cotton one's going to be better, because yeah, that can be something to think about. But I'll get onto another option in a minute that's kind of similar but different. Apparently people with sort of breathing problems or kind of mobility stuff or joint things, that sounds really unscientific. Joint things. And what am I even trying to say? Mobility challenges, problems with joints and stuff. Goodness, I don't know. That just came out weird. Not joint things. You know what I mean. You should probably talk to a doctor. I mean, the breathing thing makes sense because you've got a heavy blanket on your chest and you already struggle to breathe. I mean, I never lay in bed and think, oh my God, this is heavy, I can't breathe. I mean, if you're laying in bed and you think you can't breathe under it, that's a bad sign, it's too heavy. But yeah, I mean, if your breathing's not great, then having a heavy thing on your chest is probably not a good idea. But again, that's why the 10% rule is there, to stop you from kind of getting squashed. Yeah, I think that's kind of it for like safety stuff. So yeah, the alternatives are quite interesting. So there's also the option of a compression sheet. So a compression sheet is like almost like a giant, I don't know, I would say a sock, but it's open both ends. So imagine like goodness me, probably easier to just Google it rather than listening to my terrible explanations that don't really make sense. But yeah, what's basically happening, it's a stretchy lycra sheet that goes over the mattress, so you're actually putting the mattress inside a sock or a sleeping bag kind of thing. So it's like you're literally putting the mattress inside this thing, and then what you're doing is you're climbing into it. So you're laying on the sheet, you're laying on the mattress, and the stretchy sheet is on top of you. Goodness, that was a very long-winded way of me explaining. But basically, yeah, you're basically inside this compression sheet that's attached to the mattress. Honestly, Google it and just ignore my terrible description. They're great though, because they are a lot cooler and much better for the summer when a weighted blanket's a bit of a no-go because it's too hot. I mean, I've tried both. It is a different sensation to a weighted blanket, but it's actually quite similar at the same time. You don't have to necessarily worry about all the sort of sizing because they just come as, single bed. You don't need to worry so much about the weight either, because they're not weighted, they're just stretchy. So, you're climbing into it, and then it's sort of, again, hugging you. If you've heard of body socks, it's kind of like a body sock, but on your whole bed. The downside is that they are an absolute nightmare to put on. Right, now I have got a cabin bed and a really hefty mattress. So, I actually got a compression sheet for Christmas. That was literally last week, and I actually tried to put it on my bed. But my goodness, if you've got a cabin bed and you've got a heavy mattress, maybe not the best thing. I mean, yeah, it's possible, but I've decided I'm going to use my compression sheet for when I go and stay at my nan's house. So, and keep the blanket for at home, because my mattress is just too heavy to be lifting up and down. It's a full workout. I mean, if you like a workout, which I do, then it's one way of getting those, keeping the Apple Watch or Fitbit or whatever you might have happy. I mean, goodness me, the amount of exercise I got doing that was quite unbelievable. Anyone would have thought I'd run a marathon. No, not really. But it's hard work. So, yeah, just consider the practicalities. And if you've got a double bed, then, oh, my goodness, yeah. Maybe not. But again, maybe. Depends how much you want to do it, or what works for you. These are just options. Weighted lap pads, these are great. So, basically like a blanket, but it's a heavy pad that you put on your lap. Again, in the name says it all. They're really good because they're portable, and you can take them basically anywhere, although they are still quite heavy. I mean, I've got a really nice heavy one, but there's much more chance of taking that around than taking a ginormous blanket. They can be used in loads of different situations, maybe school or college or work or in the car, anywhere. But it kind of brings me on to, kind of how do you incorporate them? Because it's all good and well having these things, but it's how do you incorporate them? So again, it's what works for you. But, the blankets are great for in bed. They're really good for that. That's actually how I use mine. They can also be used just when you're at home, maybe if you're meditating or relaxing, reading, watching telly. They're great. Whereas when you're out and about, I'd say a lap pad is going to be, better potentially, but it's just what works for you and in what situations. It might be, because they're great if you're overwhelmed or overstimulated. It might be that having a lap pad somewhere like, at college or work or somewhere that you might find a bit more overwhelming could be helpful, or a blanket. They can help you to focus. It really is just about what works. I personally, for me, I use the blanket to sleep, and then I have my lap pad when I'm just chilling out, maybe on my beanbag in my room, maybe when I'm meditating. But they are really good, and I do find that it helps me to feel more grounded and calmer, and especially in bed, because I always find that, I've always slept like what is it they say, snug as a bug in a rug. I always sleep so wrapped up. Before I got a weighted blanket, I've always kind of been like that. I would wrap myself in the duvet, so cocooned in this blanket that you could barely even see me. It just look like a, big lump on the bed. I remember I stayed over at my nan's once, and she came in. I was only little. I was probably like 10 or something, or 11. And she came in and checked on me, and in the morning she was like, I was so worried because I could barely even see you, and I was like, were you even breathing under there? So yeah, my nan was like, so tightly wrapped up. She was like, can Lou breathe under all that duvet? But yeah, I've always liked the feeling of being tucked up and tightly wrapped up and cocooned. I've always loved that feeling, So even if I'm given the option of where to sit, I'll sit next to a wall because I like to feel cocooned. But some people hate that. Some people get really claustrophobic, and the idea of a weighted blanket in bed could be their worst nightmare. So, it completely depends, but I love it. I love the weighted blanket, and I find it makes me feel really grounded, and I don't feel like I'm kind of going to float away or anything as I'm falling asleep. I feel nicely, grounded to the earth and calm. And it does just help to quiet the mind and quiet the body, and bring the mind back down a bit, maybe if I'm overwhelmed or something. But yeah, they're great. I mean, I'll finish on this point really. They are one of many, many tools to help with anxiety or sleep or sensory challenges, but they won't work for everyone, because this is the thing. None of these strategies are literally for everyone. They are options and things that could help. Just because something could help doesn't mean it will. So it's just trying it out and seeing if it will or won't. And generally, if you're somebody that does enjoy being cozy, or someone that loves to be hugged and have that lovely deep pressure, then it's probably going to be great. If you're someone that doesn't like that, or maybe does get quite claustrophobic, doesn't like smaller spaces or that kind of enclosed feeling, you probably wouldn't like it. So it's completely individual, but they're great for me and they help others, but then there are some people that they don't work for. But anyway, that's probably enough rambling about weighted blankets, and on that note, I am going to get out my weighted lap pad and do a meditation. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found it helpful. And good luck with your weighted blanket and lap pad and compression sheet discovery journey. And I'll be back soon. Bye.